My name is Eliza. I'm 65 years old and live in San Francisco. I've been divorced for many years, raised my son on my own, and grew used to the quiet rhythm of living alone. That is, until the day he called me, his words vague and hesitant, as he tried to persuade me not to come to my grandson's graduation. But I couldn't break the promise I made to my grandson. So I boarded a flight to Los Angeles holding his graduation gift close to my chest, thinking I'd surprise him. What I didn't expect was to see the one thing I never wanted to. That afternoon, the sunlight spilled gently through the kitchen window. I was sitting at my little round table with half a cup of still warm tea beside me, a stack of congratulatory cards spread out, and a roll of cartoon-themed wrapping paper printed with tiny graduation caps. I was about to wrap the gift I'd picked out for Lucas, a beginner's telescope. He'd mentioned it during a video call a few weeks back, saying he was suddenly super into astronomy, and even showed me a sketch he'd done of the moon. I'd taken out a post-it note with the time and place of the graduation written in his own handwriting. He'd scribbled it for me during our family dinner last month. I still remembered how earnestly he had said, "Grandma, you have to come. I really want you to see me walk on stage and get my certificate." My teacher even asked me to give a little speech, 'cause I'm one of the top students. I'd smiled at him and promised I wouldn't miss it. But that very day I dialed Jay's number, and heard something I hadn't expected at all. "Mom, you really don't need to come all the way out here," he said gently, but there was a clear note of dismissal beneath the calm. "It's just an elementary school graduation, not a big college thing. We've got a lot going on this week." I froze. "But, didn't you say?" I hesitated. "Lucas told me himself. He asked me to be there." He went quiet for a moment, then gave a soft chuckle. "He's just a kid, Mom. He says all kinds of things. Scarlett thinks it's a bit overblown too. I mean, it's a cute little event, not exactly a milestone." I didn't respond. I could hear some background noise on his end, like someone popping open a bottle in the kitchen. Then he lowered his voice and added, "And the forecast says rain in your area. It's really not worth the trouble." My eyes drifted to the telescope on the table. My fingers traced the edge of the wrapping paper without thinking, my chest hollow. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness, really. It was more like the quiet disappointment you feel when you realize you weren't actually invited to the moment you thought would matter to someone. "So, should I mail the gift or just have it delivered to the school?" I asked, doing my best to sound casual. Mailing it to the house would be great. "Thanks, Mom." Right before the line went dead, he added hastily, "Really, don't overthink it." I set the phone down and looked across the kitchen at the fridge. Pinned to the door was a photo from last fall. Lucas standing in the yard in his werewolf costume, fake fur stuck to his face, his blue eyes crinkled in a huge grin. He told me I was the coolest grandma in the world because I made him the best costume that year. Now it seemed like I wasn't even supposed to be present at his graduation. I tried to tell myself Jay might be right. Maybe it really wasn't a big deal. Maybe I was being too emotional. But sitting alone in my quiet kitchen with only the hum of the upstairs fan for company, that little lie popped like a soda bubble. The next day I went out for tea with Jill, a friend I'd met through the neighborhood book club. She's 2 years younger than me, loud-voiced, blunt to a fault, and one of those people who can judge right from wrong in 3 seconds flat. I was stirring my coffee absent-mindedly when I said, I was planning to go to my grandson's elementary graduation, but Jay told me not to bother. Said it wasn't that big of a deal. She dropped her fork like I'd just insulted her directly. Her voice cut through the mellow cafe music like a knife. "Are you kidding me? You're his only grandma. It's his elementary school graduation. For crying out loud, of course you should be there. How's he supposed to remember you as part of his life if you're not around for stuff like this?" I was momentarily at a loss for words. Jay said it'd be too much trouble. He doesn't want me tiring myself out. "Trouble my foot," Jill snapped. "It's not 1975. Travel's easy, you're in good health and you're retired. Since when do you need anyone's permission to go see your grandson graduate?" I gave a small laugh. "It's not that he forbade me exactly. He just doesn't want you there because it might make certain people uncomfortable, right?" She narrowed her eyes. "Didn't your ex-husband start talking to him again recently?" I didn't answer. I just slowly set my cup down and said, quieter this time, "I guess. I just don't want to show up somewhere I'm not really wanted." She looked at me for a moment, then softened. "You're not a guest, Eliza. You're family." That night, I sat at the edge of my bed and took out that little post-it note again. Then I booked a ticket. Early morning, economy class, San Francisco to Los Angeles. I didn't tell Jay. I didn't tell Scarlett. I didn't tell Lucas. I was bringing just one suitcase, a graduation card, and the telescope, wrapped carefully by my own hands. And a heart that ached quietly but hadn't quite given up. I wasn't going there to accuse, to demand answers, or to make a scene. I was going to surprise my grandson, who once asked me to be there. Even if I had to stand in the back, hidden in the crowd, watching from afar as he wore that little paper graduation cap, just one glimpse would be enough. While digging through the guest room closet for my suitcase, I accidentally knocked over an old box. It hit the floor with a soft thud, spilling a stack of photo albums across the carpet. As I bent down to pick them up, my eye caught a faded photo, Jay's high school graduation taken in Golden Gate Park. His curls had just been trimmed short, and he was wearing a blue and white graduation gown, one arm slung proudly around my shoulder. I had my hair dyed warm chestnut back then, wearing a bright blue trench coat, my smile even bigger than his. I remembered what he said to me that day. "Mom, I know Dad treated you like crap all those years. You had to be both mom and dad, working your tail off and still helping me with school. But once I'm making money, I swear, it's my turn to take care of you. You won't have to worry ever again." I traced the edge of the photo with my fingertip. It felt cold. That was the year I filed for divorce. We were already living apart, and I remember feeling hollow most nights. But as long as I had Jay, I didn't feel afraid. Andy and I officially split when Jay was 19. But the cracks had started long before. Andy was in real estate development. The market was booming then, and he was always on business trips, gone for 3 days, sometimes a week. I thought he was hustling for the family, until I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice on the line, blunt as a hammer. "Your husband has another family. You're not the only wife." I didn't cry. I remember just closing the phone and going back to the kitchen to finish dinner. Jay came home late that night, chatting between bites about rehearsing his graduation speech. I looked at his bent head and thought, even if this house was falling apart, I'd keep it together long enough for him to graduate in peace. After Andy moved out, we rarely heard from him. Every now and then he'd send a check, never enough to cover anything real. He didn't show up for Jay's graduation. Didn't help move him into his college dorm either. I handled every form, every tuition bill, every suitcase. I still remember hauling bags up the stairs of his new dorm at midnight, in the pouring rain. I told myself then, it's fine. It'll get better. Somehow I've always been that kind of person, the kind who believes even the worst hand can still win the game. Later, when Jay landed his first internship in LA, I paid 3 months' rent to get him started and bought the appliances. Then came the wedding, then Lucas. Scarlett wasn't the warmest person, but she sent cards every Thanksgiving. Sometimes a photo of Lucas with a note. "He drew a rocket today," or "his first museum trip," asked 1,000 questions. I've never felt like I was absent from this family. Even if we don't live in the same city. Even if we don't see each other as often as we used to. Even if, lately, Lucas sometimes calls me Grandma Eliza, instead of just Grandma on the phone. But so what? He's still the grandson I watched grow up. I still remember the first time he ran across my backyard and tripped over the sprinkler head, landing on his butt, then ran crying straight into my arms. I remember too much. Maybe that's the problem. I hold on to every moment. But the things they remember? Fewer and fewer with each passing year. I slid the photo albums back into the box, tucked the telescope gently into the bottom of my suitcase, and added a clean white blouse. I'm not one for making a scene, but in that moment I suddenly wanted to look presentable. Even if I'd be sitting in the very last row of folding chairs, I wanted to look like someone who belonged there. The wind outside picked up and the little chimes in the yard rang faintly. I stood at the door, staring out at the dimming sky, suddenly uncertain. Not about the ceremony, but about Jay. I never imagined he would lie to me. Even if it was for my own good, even if he wanted to keep things simple, this wasn't something he had the right to keep me out of. You know, sometimes doors don't slam shut with a bang. Sometimes they just quietly lock behind you. And it's not until you reach for the handle that you realize the space you thought was yours never truly was. I walked back inside, turned off the lights, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the half-packed suitcase. Maybe Jill was right. I'm his mother, not some expendable neighbor. I'm going not to make a point about how important I am, but so my grandson knows, I never walked away. Even if all I get is one smile, one hug, one surprised you came, it'll be worth it. My heart was in my throat when the plane landed. The sky over Los Angeles was heavy and gray, like an unmade bed, thick and wrinkled with low June clouds. It wasn't cold, just damp. I stood outside the taxi stand, wind tugging at the collar of my lightweight coat like a quiet warning. You might not be welcome where you're going. The driver was a woman in her 50s, wearing oversized sunglasses. She started chatting halfway through the ride, said she'd just become a grandma herself. She glanced at me through the rearview mirror and said, "So you're here for your grandson's graduation?" I nodded. "Yeah. Thought I'd surprise him." He grinned. "Great idea. These days showing up means more than 100 cards." I smiled back. But it never made it to my eyes. By the time I arrived at the school, the ceremony hadn't started yet, but a small crowd had already gathered outside the main entrance. Parents, siblings, relatives holding balloons and flowers, and kids in matching t-shirts printed with Class of 2024. I didn't get too close. I stood back behind a thin row of trees near the sidewalk, gripping the strap of my bag like a lifeline. I felt like some undercover reporter, pretending to scroll through my phone while sneaking glances at the archway set up across the field, handmade signs fluttering with big block letters. "Congratulations, graduates." The loudspeakers gave a few scratchy test bursts, and somewhere nearby kids were laughing and shouting. That familiar softness bloomed slowly in my chest. The kind that tells you just one glimpse of your grandson will make everything worth it. I wandered the outer edges of the crowd, keeping to the periphery. I didn't want to bump into Jay or Scarlett, not right away. I wasn't even sure what exactly I was afraid of. Maybe it was just that look. "That you really came?" The minutes dragged on. Finally, one of the teachers stepped up to the mic and the crowd fell quiet. I stood on my tiptoes at the edge of it all. And there he was. Lucas. He was wearing a white shirt and navy trousers, the collar a little crooked, his hair tousled like he'd slept in too late and hadn't had time to fix it. Scarlett stood beside him, gently adjusting his cuff. He looked taller than he had in our last video call, by at least half a head. His blue eyes were still the same, but there was something steadier in his gaze now, more grown up. Jay stood on his other side, jacket unbuttoned, watching his son with focused pride. I was just about to step a little closer when I saw him. Indy. He was standing right next to Jay in a gray suit, hair silvered but looking surprisingly sharp. Beside him stood a woman in a pale beige dress, every curl in place, her makeup flawless, her long skirt bright and flowing. That was Mary, his new wife. They were chatting with Jay, smiling, positioning themselves for a photo. Scarlett nudged Lucas gently toward the center, and Andy casually laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. Mary stood beside them, smiling kindly, playing the role of the considerate step-grandmother. Then I heard Jay's voice rise above the buzz of the crowd, cheerful and warm. "All right, look this way, let's get a full family photo." I froze. Family photo. Those two words went straight through my ears and settled deep in my chest. The volume wasn't loud, but in my head they exploded like a drumbeat again and again. I wasn't hoping to be in the center of anything. I just thought, naively maybe, that even if I stood at the edge of the crowd I could still be part of that memory. But in the frame of that family photo, there had never been a space left for me. I lowered my head instinctively and took a step back, brushing against a tree branch with a soft crackle. I turned quickly, my heart stumbling in my chest, feet suddenly unsteady like I was walking on clouds. I glanced over my shoulder. They were laughing at the camera, Lucas included, flashing a practiced smile. Andy said something that made Mary swat him playfully, her laugh ringing clear across the field. And in that moment I finally understood. Jay didn't want me here, not because of the travel, not because it was just a little ceremony. It was because they had built a new family. And I wasn't in the picture anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't storm up to them. I didn't ask why. I just picked up my bag, turned and quietly walked away. Through the margins of the crowd, the way someone might slip out of a room they were never really part of. No one saw me. No one knew I had ever been there. Just like no one remembered I once promised I would be. I don't remember how I made it out of the school gates. Only when my feet hit the sidewalk did I realize my throat was dry and tight, like something was stuck inside it. Even swallowing felt like a struggle. I forced myself not to look back. But out of the corner of my eye I still saw it all. The archway, the balloons, the laughing faces. And that family. Well, I shouldn't say that family. Because I used to be part of that family. Didn't I? It's just that now, it feels like my name's already been erased. I flagged down a taxi. The driver was a young guy in a baseball cap, bass-heavy hip-hop pulsing through the speakers. He glanced at me and asked, "Where to, ma'am?" I mumbled the name of a small motel I'd found on the map. My voice came out so hoarse I barely recognized it as my own. As the car pulled away, I leaned back in the seat, clutching my bag tightly. The telescope was still inside, pressed against my knees. I could feel its shape, solid and unrelenting, like a weight reminding me of everything I'd just witnessed. I really thought I could hold it together. I tried. But tears don't ask for permission. They don't wait for the right moment. They don't care if you're still out in public. They just break through, quietly without warning, and fall. I turned my face to the window and pressed the back of my hand against the corner of my eye. The driver didn't say a word. She just quietly turned the music down until the radio slipped into silence. The city slipped by outside, but my mind was stuck replaying moments from years gone by. I remembered the night Jay had his first fever, how I sat by his bed the whole time swapping cool towels, terrified the heat might do something to his brain. And Andy? He was on a business trip, probably drinking somewhere in a bar, never even called to check in. I remembered the year Jay started college, how I started saving 3 months in advance just to buy him the newest laptop on the market. He had laughed and hugged me saying, "Mom, this is overkill. What college kid needs a computer this fancy?" That Christmas he wrote in my card, "I'll never forget, it was you who made all of this possible." But now I can't help but wonder. In his eyes, am I just the woman who sends gifts and says, "I love you" too often? A sentimental burden clinging to a past he's already replaced? Someone standing in the way of his new seamless family photo? When the car pulled up outside the motel, my tears were long gone. The driver didn't rush me. She just waited, quiet and still, until I took a deep breath, wiped my eyes and stepped out. The place was one of those roadside motels. 2 stories, plastic flower baskets hanging by each door in neat little rows. I swiped the keycard and stepped into the room, dropped my bag, sat down on the bed, and kept holding the handle like it was an anchor. After a minute, I unzipped the bag and took out the telescope. It had started as a little dream Lucas once shared. He wanted to look at the stars. And I just wanted to help him chase that dream, even in the smallest way. Now it was just a gift I had no one to give to. I didn't open the box. I just placed it on the bed beside me and stared at it. I wasn't trying to intrude. I wasn't trying to claim anyone's place. I just wanted to show up at one of his little life milestones and say, "Grandma's here. I've always been here." But somehow that simple truth had turned me into a complication. An unnecessary presence, someone too awkward to include in the picture, too out of place to mention. I sat there for a long time. The light outside faded to orange through the gap in the curtains. I didn't turn on the lamp. I didn't eat dinner. My phone buzzed once, just a credit card alert, and I didn't even look. Maybe it was the quiet that brought everything back. All the memories started flooding in. The year I got divorced, I stayed in a place like this. Andy had just come clean, said he needed space. And I packed a few bags and moved out, ended up in a rundown motel on the edge of town. I remember lying on the bed that night, flipping through our wedding album, wondering where did I go wrong. Tonight felt almost exactly the same. But the question had changed. I wasn't asking what did I do wrong. Now I was asking, how does someone go from being everything to becoming invisible? I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept playing old reels like a projector that wouldn't shut off. Jay digging tunnels in the sand as a little boy. Lucas chasing squirrels in my backyard during his first visit with Scarlett. They couldn't have forgotten all of that. But maybe they just stopped caring. The next morning I asked Jay to meet me. We picked a cafe near his neighborhood, one he often visited. I used to stop there with him whenever I came to Los Angeles. The barista still remembered me, smiling as she said, "It's been a while, Mrs. Palmer." I ordered a black coffee. No sugar. The sky was overcast and cars zipped past on the other side of the street. In the glass I caught a glimpse of my reflection. My eyes looked clearer than I expected. Sharper. 10 minutes later Jay walked in, heading toward me with quick, uneasy steps. He was wearing a gray wool jacket, his hair a little unkempt with dark circles under his eyes. "Mom, you actually came?" he said, not even sitting down yet. His voice carried a thin layer of tension, maybe even a trace of accusation. I set down my cup and looked at him. You told me not to come, I said calmly. I didn't understand what you really meant. So I thought I'd ask you in person. He sat down awkwardly, pulling at the sleeves of his jacket. I just didn't want you to go through all that effort. Flying down from San Francisco for such a small event. It was barely 20 minutes. I wasn't there for the ceremony. My voice was soft, but it landed exactly where I needed it to. I was there for Lucas. He wanted me to be there. And I promised him I would. Jay looked down, letting out a quiet sigh. I just wanted to keep things simple. Simple, I repeated, leaning back in my chair, my tone even. And by simple, you mean putting your father front and center, letting Mary take the spot I once held and telling me not to come? He didn't answer. He just stirred his coffee, face unreadable. You could have been honest, I said. If you felt I was in the way or that my presence would be awkward in your new blended family portrait, I could have handled that. But don't dress it up as, I was worried about you. That lie was never about me. His brow furrowed. He finally looked up, his voice low and strained. Mom, you always make everything so personal. I didn't say you were in the way. I just think you get too emotional. You read too much into everything. Then tell me this, I said, still calm. What does a reasonable arrangement look like to you? Me sitting alone in a cab crying quietly so I don't ruin anything? Convincing myself over the phone that he didn't mean it that way? Does that sound reasonable to you? He opened his mouth, but no words came. I leaned in, voice quiet but sharp. Just answer me this. Yesterday when you said, look this way, everybody smile. Did it ever cross your mind that your mother might be standing across the street, gift in hand, watching from behind the crowd? His expression shifted. His voice, when it came, was tight. Mom, this is exactly what I mean. You're being dramatic. I do care about you, but you let your emotions override everything else. I looked him straight in the eye. I used to think you, of all people, understood what I've sacrificed for you. I didn't expect what came next. Jay let out a dry laugh and said, you gave me a lot, sure. But in the end, all you ever gave me was emotion. Love doesn't equal capability. And it sure as hell doesn't build a future. I froze. Jay went on, voice cool, almost calculated. Dad's been in real estate for decades. I'm in the same field now. Keeping things good with him means access to resources, to contacts. Yeah, he wasn't around much when I was a kid, but that's history. People have to look forward. And you're retired. You've got your life. Just don't bring your guilt-laced love into my decisions. That's not how I operate anymore. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I stood up slowly, shouldering my bag. You're right, I said, tone steady. I'm retired. And yes, all I have left to offer is emotion. I paused, eyes locked on his. So I've decided, from now on, my emotions are reserved for the people who actually value them. He blinked, not quite registering what I meant. I smiled faintly. You might want to take another look at that property transfer agreement I sent you. It might not be exactly what you think it is anymore. Then I turned and walked away. Didn't look back. But I knew. Behind me, the certainty on his face was already starting to crack. After I left the cafe, I didn't go straight back to the motel. The wind on the street bit at my cheeks, and the gray sky above mirrored the quiet inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't shame. It was a rare kind of clarity, still, sharp, and final. The kind that tells you, this is the end of the line. And if you keep walking from here on, you'll be walking alone. And that's okay. I stood at the corner and pulled out my phone, scrolling to a folder I hadn't opened in a while. A contact for the law firm I'd consulted a few years ago when I was reviewing my retirement plans. Back then, I'd still believed in securing something for Jay's future. I'd had hope. I'd had trust. I was even optimistic enough to think he'd understand what I was trying to do for him. But now it's clear he believes only one man, his emotionally absent father, can offer him a future. I'd never finalized the transfer of that property. The Mill Valley house was supposed to go to Jay this summer. The paperwork was halfway done. I'd even hired Scarlett's favorite designer to visit and start planning a kitchen remodel. The idea was that they'd move in and Lucas would finally have a backyard for his telescope. But today I'd decided. I'm done laying bricks on someone else's path. The cab pulled up outside the law firm, A tidy 3-story building with glass walls reflecting the street, and me standing calm but resolute. Inside, the receptionist greeted me with a warm smile as she poured coffee. "Mrs. Palmer, we haven't seen you since the start of the year, right? You were here about your estate planning." I nodded. "Yes. I need to make some adjustments. Please schedule me in with one of the attorneys." Within 10 minutes, I was in a conference room sitting across from Bill, a composed, middle-aged lawyer I'd met before. He flipped through my previous files, his demeanor professional but not cold. "What can we help you with today, Ms. Palmer?" "I want to revoke a property transfer," I said, voice steady. "The 2-bedroom in Mill Valley. I had planned to gift it to my son this summer. I've changed my mind. I'd like to put it on the market instead and have the proceeds returned to my account." Bill nodded, fingers tapping efficiently across his keyboard. "According to our records, the deed is still under your sole ownership, and the transfer hasn't been executed. Revoking it poses no legal issues. We will, however, need you to sign a formal statement to protect you from any future claims of oral agreements. I'll also loop in our property consultant and listing attorney for next steps." I listened. I nodded. "I'm aware you might think I'm just an emotional mother acting on impulse," I said, "but I know what I'm doing. And I won't regret it." Bill offered a small smile. "Actually, in my experience, the clients who make the most resolute changes aren't the ones acting in anger. They're the ones who've finally figured out what they want." He looked up. "For protocol, I'll need to include a reason for the withdrawal in the declaration. Would you like help wording it?" I smiled. "Write this. It's a waste to give something valuable to someone who doesn't value it. Might as well burn it." He chuckled, nodding with what felt like genuine respect. We signed the revocation notice and the listing authorization draft. My hand didn't shake. I think for years I was afraid of losing my connection to him. But now, I'm more afraid of giving my trust to someone who's proven they don't deserve it. Outside, I stood at the corner of the street watching the crowds pass, feeling more grounded than I had in years. For over 3 decades I'd instinctively planned for Jay, saving for his future, stepping aside for his marriage, setting aside money for his son. And now I understood. Some people don't fail to appreciate you because they don't know your worth. They do it because they think you'll never leave. That afternoon I walked for a long time. From the financial district all the way down to the waterfront. The sea breeze carried a hint of salt. I sat on a bench and opened my phone. There it was, a draft email I'd once prepared for Jay, meant to be sent when Lucas started middle school. Attached was the original deed transfer document. The message had started with, "This is the beginning of a new chapter for you and your family." Without hesitation I hit delete. "I am not an extension of your family anymore. I have a life of my own. And you're not part of it." That evening, back at the motel, I called a realtor in San Francisco to begin the listing process. The house, 2 stories with a garden, sat in one of the city's most coveted suburbs. The agent told me, "This one will be gone in 3 days." "Easy." I replied simply. "Then let it leave my life just as quickly." For dinner I ordered pasta and a small bottle of red wine. Outside the sky dimmed into blue-gray. I sat back on the sofa, glass in hand, sipping slowly. And then, like a whisper, one sentence drifted into my mind. A woman becomes free the moment she stops needing permission to matter. The evening after I returned to San Francisco, I was sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea when my phone buzzed. A message from Scarlett. "Hi Eliza, would you be open to a quick call tonight? I'd really like to talk." I stared at the text for a moment, then replied, "Yes. Now's fine." Less than a minute later my phone rang. Her voice was a little tentative at first. "Eliza, I hope I'm not disturbing you?" "Not at all," I said. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you too." There was a pause. Then she said more quietly, "I know you were there last week. I also know you didn't let us see you." I stayed silent, waiting for her to go on. "I'm sorry," she said more firmly. "At first I thought Jay was genuinely worried about the travel, your health. But at the ceremony I saw you." My fingers tensed slightly around the cup. "You saw me." "From across the field," she confirmed. "You were standing behind the trees. I couldn't leave right away, but that night I regretted it. I shouldn't have gone along with his plan. I shouldn't have accepted the whole, just a little graduation, excuse. I waited a beat. You didn't know what they were planning. You don't need to apologize. I still want to, she said, her voice dropping. Because I also saw the way Lucas looked at Andy and Mary. That wasn't their place. That spot should have been yours. He kept glancing around, asking why you hadn't come. That one caught in my throat. I swallowed hard. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand what's really going on. But the adults do, she said quietly. I heard soft sounds in the background, pans boiling water. She was in the kitchen, probably making dinner, and I could sense the weight of what she was about to say. I've started noticing some things, she said more slowly. Especially Mary. She keeps saying you're too emotional, that you're just bored in retirement and trying to interfere with younger people's lives. I gave a small, humorless laugh. That sounds like her. She's always been like that. And frankly, she's exactly the kind of woman Andy would end up with. And Andy, Scarlett hesitated. He's been talking to Jay about these investment projects lately. At first, I didn't think much of it. But last week he asked if we'd use our house as loan collateral. I sat up straight. Your house? Yes. He said it was just for backing, nothing would actually happen, and Jay, he was seriously considering it. I tried to talk him down, but you know how he gets. Especially when it comes to his dad suddenly wanting to be involved. He's desperate to keep that going. I closed my eyes and took a breath. Andy's not returning to the family. He's circling back like a riptide. He hasn't changed, he's just gotten better at making excuses. Scarlett's voice sharpened. Eliza, can I ask you something? What really happened back then? Between you and Andy? I know you divorced, but Jay never talked about it. You never really did either. I paused, then began. He cheated. Not once, over and over. I tried to forgive him, tried to hold it together for Jay. I wanted my son to have a family. But Andy's business trips always came before us. When I finally filed for divorce, he didn't fight it. He just left a note and walked out with the woman he'd been seeing. All he said was, I don't love you anymore. Scarlett didn't say anything. Just the soft bubbling of water in the background. He hasn't done well over the years, I added. I've heard from mutual friends. Bad investments, deep in debt. Reaching out to Jay now. It's not about love. I don't know what he's told you, but I can promise you this. If he truly cared about your family, he wouldn't be asking to risk your house. He wouldn't be leveraging your son's trust to bail himself out. There was a long pause. Then Scarlett said softly but with certainty, I believe you. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm just asking you to stay alert, especially for Lucas. He's already starting to notice, she said. The other day he asked me, did Grandma Eliza not come because Grandpa said she couldn't? I didn't know what to say. I took a deep breath. My voice was steadier than I expected. You don't need to speak for me. Just be there for him. And when the time comes to choose, don't be too late. I won't be, she promised. And Eliza, anytime you want to come over, please do. Jay can say what he wants, I'll deal with it. I smiled, a genuine one this time. Thank you, Scarlett. Honestly, sometimes I think you're the one who feels most like a daughter in that household. She laughed, a little shyly. Then promise me something, okay? Come over for dinner sometime. Don't let their mistakes isolate you. I will, I said. And I'll bring my carrot cake. When the call ended, I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting to the soft streaks of color across the evening sky. And for the first time in a long time, I felt settled. The first cracks in any relationship rarely begin with some earth-shattering betrayal. Most of the time they start with something small. An oversight, a missed call, a moment of silence too long. Then little by little, everything unravels. That week I happened to be in Los Angeles for a few days. I was taking care of some property paperwork and planning to visit a friend's new art gallery. Before flying out, I texted Scarlett and said if they had time, maybe we could grab dinner while I was in town. She replied quickly, said she was traveling a lot that week for work, but if I extended my stay she'd try to make it work. I didn't press. I just sent one last message. If you need help with Lucas or anything else, just let me know. Friday afternoon at exactly 4:30 p.m. my phone rang. Scarlett's name lit up the screen. Her voice was tight with urgency the second I answered. Eliza, can you pick up Lucas? Something happened at school and I just got a call from the front office. I'm still at the airport. I wiped the dirt from my hands. I'd been repotting a plant, and said immediately, "Of course." "What happened?" "The teacher said he got into a conflict with another student and someone thought he stole something. But I know him. He'd never do that. It's probably just a misunderstanding. New school, unfamiliar kids." "I understand. I'm heading over now. Text me the address." 40 minutes later, I arrived at the school. After checking in at the front desk, I was led to the administration office. Lucas was sitting just outside, stiff as a board. He gripped the string of his school ID badge tightly in his small hands, eyes wide and unsettled, somewhere between frightened and humiliated. The moment he saw me, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "Grandma." I knelt down beside him. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're okay now." The teacher, a man in his early 40s, approached with that practiced smile people wear after defusing too many kid fights. "We haven't drawn any conclusions yet," he said. "We just wanted to understand what happened." Another student's pencil case went missing. It was later found near Lucas's backpack. "Did you search his bag?" I asked, calm but firm. "We followed procedure. Just asked questions, no search. We spoke with both kids to clarify and de-escalate." I turned to Lucas and spoke softly. "Did you take anything?" He shook his head instantly, voice trembling. "No. I didn't even know there was a pencil case missing." I nodded, then looked at the teacher. "I'm going to take him home. His mom is on her way back. If you need anything else from us, you know how to reach her." The teacher nodded, polite as ever, and walked us to the door. In the car, Lucas sat in the back seat, jaw clenched, his lips pale from biting too hard. As I drove, I said gently, "You didn't do anything wrong. You don't have to carry guilt for someone else's assumptions." He whispered, "Grandpa says, if people keep misunderstanding you, then maybe you really are doing something wrong." I blinked, tightening my grip on the wheel. "Your grandpa, Andy." He nodded. "He said if a teacher thinks you did something, you should look at yourself first. Maybe it's your fault." I felt a slow burn rise in my chest. "And what do you think?" I asked carefully. "Do you believe you did something wrong?" He shook his head again, eyes glassy. "I didn't. I hate that no one believed me." I was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you feel like you can tell your mom when something upsets you?" He hesitated. "Dad said, Mom's been too emotional lately. That I should give her space." That hit me like a blunt instrument to the chest. I slowed the car down and kept my voice soft. "Lucas, you know what? Emotions aren't bad. You're allowed to have them. So's your mom. Real love doesn't get scared when you're feeling something. It holds you even in your mess." He looked up at me, and for the first time since I picked him up, something in his expression softened. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw the faint flicker of trust returning. Like a door slightly opening, just enough to let the light back in. When we got back to the house, Scarlett was just stepping out of her car. The moment she saw me walking out with Lucas, her whole posture relaxed. She hurried over. "Thank you, Eliza," she said, her voice full of relief. I nodded, keeping my voice low. "We need to talk. He's been hearing things no child should be hearing." Scarlett's face tightened immediately. She ushered Lucas inside, handed him a mug of hot cocoa, and turned back to me. "Jay's working late tonight," she said, lowering her voice. "But honestly, I don't know how much longer I can keep quiet." I sat down across from her and looked her directly in the eyes. "You need to make him understand. The man he's trying to depend on, his father, is already undermining this family." She hesitated, then reached for her phone. She pulled up a few screenshots, bank transfers. "Did you know," she said, "he's already loaned Andy money. Twice. The last one was $3,000. Andy labeled it as consulting services, but let's be honest, that money's gone." I looked up sharply. "And you told Jay the risk?" "I did," she said coldly. "He wouldn't listen. He told me, even if it fails, I owe my father the chance to try." I let out a bitter laugh. "He's not giving Andy a chance, he's feeding a fantasy. A desperate wish to make up for years of absence." Scarlett nodded. Her tone was calm, but her words were steel. "Well, the fantasy ends now." I glanced at Lucas, curled up on the couch, quietly watching TV, but the occasional flicker of anxiety in his eyes was unmistakable. I took a deep breath. "I'm not asking you to take sides. I just want you both to open your eyes, to see who you're putting your faith in, and who actually needs your protection. I know, Scarlett said. I just hope Jay wakes up before it's too late. That night she sent me a single line of text. I think he's finally starting to doubt it all. The next morning I had just finished watering the garden behind the motel when my phone rang. It was Jay. His name on the screen made me pause. I hesitated, then picked up. Mom. His voice was low, hoarse, like he hadn't slept. I'm here, I said steady. There was a pause. Then he asked, do you have time? I'd like to talk. In person. I considered for a moment. Meet me at the cafe near my motel. 10 o'clock. He said. That was all. When he walked in he looked worse than he had days ago. Unshaven, eyes shadowed, shoulders heavy with something he wasn't ready to name. But what I did see, what I hadn't seen in a long time, was doubt. Scarlett told me what you did for Lucas, he began. Thank you. I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at him. You didn't come here just to say thank you, did you? He shook his head and pulled a small stack of papers from his coat pocket. These are the transfers I made to Dad. And these, he tapped a second sheet, are the project outlines he gave me. Last night I took them to a friend at the bank. He gave a dry, bitter smile. Turns out none of it's real. The consulting firm was dissolved 2 years ago. The foreign investment platform is a ghost shell. I said nothing. I asked him about it. Jay went on, his voice quieter, like he was talking more to himself. At first he lied. Said it was just accounting stuff. I kept pushing. Finally he snapped and said, aren't you my son? Your father's in trouble and you're not helping? Then why the hell did I even bother having you? Jay looked up at me, his eyes rimmed red. I asked gently, and what did you say to that? He swallowed. I told him I did try to help. I did want him to be a part of my family again. But family doesn't mean draining people. It's supposed to mean support, not manipulation. I told him, he doesn't want a son. He wants an ATM. When he finished, his whole body sagged back into the chair like he'd been holding that sentence in for years. I nodded slowly, reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I slid it across the table. He frowned, confused. What's this? 3 years of his civil debt records, his credit rating, and 2 outstanding collections from separate banks, I said calmly. Jay's eyes widened. How did you even get these? Because I've known who he is for a long time, I replied. You just never wanted to hear it. He stared down at the papers, his fingers trembling against the edge of the table. You think I'm meddling, emotional, outdated, that I don't understand your world, I said, my voice calm but firm. But let me tell you something, Jay. The problems I've handled, the landmines I've stepped on, the people I've dealt with in my life, they probably outnumber all the balance sheets you've ever seen. He looked up, a flicker of panic breaking through his exhaustion. The house, he began, and in his eyes for a fleeting second, I saw a glimmer of hope. The one you were planning to give me, was that? I cut him off. Yes. I was going to give it to you. He didn't speak, just clenched the edge of the chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. But then I realized, I continued, I no longer want to use my life to maintain a relationship that lacks the most basic form of respect. Mom, it's not that I'm not grateful, he said quickly, almost pleading. I really believed Dad had changed. He told me he regretted not being there while I was growing up. He said he wanted to make things right. I looked at him and said, steady as stone, maybe he does regret it, but not because he missed you. Because now you're in a position to help pay off his debts. Jay dropped his head into his hands and exhaled, long and shaky. I didn't reach out. I didn't offer comfort. Maybe this was the first time he was truly feeling the weight of what he'd lost. And I wanted him to remember it. Eventually he lifted his head, voice scraping like broken glass. So, you don't trust me anymore? I didn't answer right away. I simply said softly, trust isn't a promise. It's something you build piece by piece. You broke it, Jay. Don't expect me to keep standing where you left me. His jaw tightened. I get it. I stood up, reaching for my bag. I won't be designing your future anymore. You're a grown man. Time you take responsibility for it. I didn't offer a hug. I didn't add a single word of encouragement. When I walked out of the cafe I didn't look back. But I knew, he was still sitting at that table, staring at the crumbled illusion he'd clung to, now sinking into the cold light of reality. A few days later, I returned to San Francisco. Instead of going straight home from the airport, I headed to the coast, a trail I loved, where the path hugged the cliffs and the Golden Gate arched in the distance, its steel frame drawing a bold red line across the sky. I sat on a bench, coffee in hand, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Snapshots of me and Jay from years ago. Of me cradling newborn Lucas. Of the three of us in the botanical gardens, smiling under the sun. Those pictures once filled me with pride. With hope. They still mean something. But now I don't need them to prove I was needed. I'm not someone's shadow. Not someone's sacrifice. I'm me. The next day I called my attorney to confirm. The offers on the Mill Valley property had reached the expected range. I told her to accept the highest bid. The funds were to be transferred directly into my personal trust, for my retirement and for a community initiative I'd been dreaming of. After walking through the steps, she asked politely, "Would you still like to keep the original heir designation active?" "No," I said without hesitation. "Cancel it. The ownership is mine, now and for as long as I decide who is truly worthy." She laughed lightly. "You've always been one of our most decisive clients." I chuckled. A woman finds clarity the moment she stops waiting for others to define her worth. That evening an email landed in my inbox. It was from Scarlett. Subject: "We'd love to have you for dinner sometime soon." Body: "Lucas has something he wants to say to you. I hope you'll come. And this time, don't stay at a motel. Family should stay under the same roof." I smiled. Quietly, deeply, and without hesitation. The kind of smile that comes when something broken doesn't hurt anymore. Because you've already built something better. That day I put on a crisp white blouse, packed a homemade carrot cake, grabbed a small bottle of red wine, and drove 6 hours to Los Angeles. Not as a supporting character in someone else's story, but as a woman who was independent, clear-eyed, and still willing to show up with warmth. When the door opened, it was Lucas who came running out. "Grandma!" he shouted, flinging himself into my arms with more force than I remembered from last time. "Hey kiddo," I held him tight, "you've gotten taller. I made a drawing for you," he beamed, tugging me inside. "It's the four of us together." He handed me the picture. Himself, Scarlett, Jay, and me, all standing under a big tree with the word home written in the branches. In the middle there was a smiling dog sitting under the shade. I pointed to the dog. "And who's this?" "That's the dog you said you wanted," he said proudly. "I drew it early, so you already have one." I laughed, my eyes stinging, but no tears fell. I folded the drawing carefully. "When I finally get one, I'll name it Sunny, because it looks like it belongs in the sunshine with us on a weekend." Scarlett stepped over quietly. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I know, a lot has happened." I looked at her and nodded. Sometimes the messier things get, the clearer it becomes who's really steady. We shared a look. One of those wordless understandings, and then we both smiled. At dinner, Jay helped carry dishes from the kitchen. He didn't say much. Just glanced at me now and then, like he wanted to speak but didn't know how to begin. I didn't force an apology. I didn't make small talk to ease the silence. Relationships don't reset with a meal. And forgiveness isn't something you earn with a single, "I'm sorry." After dinner, I saw him standing alone in the backyard, slipping his phone into his pocket, staring up at the sky like he was finally asking questions he should have asked years ago. Scarlett came over and said quietly, "He's starting to reevaluate a lot. I'm giving him space." I nodded. I gave him more chances than he ever knew. This time I'm giving one to myself. 2 weeks later, I pinned a hand-lettered flyer to the community bulletin board at the cultural center. Eliza's room. Financial clarity and rebuilding for retired women. Wednesdays 2 to 4 p.m. You don't have to live for anyone else to win yourself back. 5 women came to the first session. 11 the second. By the end of the month, we had to move to the larger conference room because the folding chairs just weren't enough anymore. Every week I shared what I knew: real estate steps, trust management, and most importantly, how to define your worth without waiting for anyone's permission. After one session, a woman approached me and said, "You're the clearest thinking woman I've ever heard." I smiled. "Clarity's not a gift," I told her. "It's something life corners you into." One afternoon after a talk, I found a letter waiting for me. It was from Lucas. He turned that same drawing into the cover, and inside, in crooked but careful handwriting, he'd written, "Grandma, you're the coolest woman I know. When I grow up, I want to protect others like you do, not wait for someone to protect me." I sat on my balcony holding the letter. The sun was warm against my knees. The breeze stirred the air just enough. And in that moment I finally understood. Rebuilding your life doesn't always start with fanfare. It begins the moment you stop living as someone else's extension and finally decide to become your own foundation. That morning, sunlight filtered through the white curtains and scattered across the kitchen tiles. I had just brewed myself a cup of tea, sat down, and hadn't even cracked open my book when the phone rang. It was Lucas. "Grandma," he said, his voice unusually serious, "can you come to my next school open house?" I smiled. "Didn't we just see each other last month?" "But this time the teacher said we could invite someone we're especially thankful for." He paused, his voice softening. "I picked you." I froze for a moment, surprised. I didn't answer right away, just asked gently, "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure," he said quickly, like he was afraid I'd second-guess it. "You've always been there for me. I want them to know that." I nodded, though he couldn't see it. That familiar warmth, the kind that stitches up the old tears in your heart, quietly began to rise. "Then I'll dress like a proper guest of honor," I joked. He giggled. "I'll make you a badge to wear." We picked a date. Before he hung up, he added, "When you get here, don't leave right away. I have something I want to give you." As the screen dimmed in my hand, my thoughts wandered back years ago, to the day I watched Jay walk across the stage at his college graduation. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what fulfillment feels like. Watching your child succeed while you cheer quietly from the audience. But now I see it differently. Fulfillment isn't just being invited to witness someone else's moment. It's when the people you love start writing you into the center of their story, without needing to be asked. On Family Day, I wore a navy wool coat and pinned a hand-drawn badge to my chest. Lucas had made it himself. It was a crooked little smiley face, with the words scrawled beside it in uneven letters. "Grandma is home." Scarlett greeted me at the entrance with a warm hug. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. I smiled. This time I'm the official guest. Had to show up. Jay was there too. He gave me a quiet nod, restrained but sincere. There were still words left unspoken between us. But that was okay. Real relationships aren't rebuilt in a single conversation. They take time and effort. Trust, respect, and the willingness to keep trying. After the event, Lucas pulled me over to the side lawn. "I made you something," he said, handing me a small rolled-up booklet. "This is my first issue of our family magazine. It's for you." I unrolled it. The cover was hand-drawn. A woman standing on a mountaintop, stars behind her and a dog at her feet. Sunny, the dog I'd said I wanted one day. At the top, in big bold letters, it read, "The Real Family Hero." I smiled through it front to back, then knelt down and hugged him close. "Thank you," I said, holding him tighter than I probably needed to. "Grandma has always been proud to have you as my grandson." He blinked up at me and said softly, "And I'll keep giving you reasons to be proud." On the drive back to San Francisco, I didn't check my phone. Didn't scroll through emails. Didn't plan my week or review my trust account. I just rested my head against the window and watched the sunlight thread its way through the clouds like strands of gold, mending all the fractures this year had left behind. I thought about that family photo, the one I had been left out of. And for the first time I didn't resent it. It wasn't proof that I didn't belong. It was proof that I had stopped blindly sacrificing myself to be in someone else's frame. In life there will always be pictures that don't include you. That doesn't mean you're not important. It means you've started telling your own story, in your own frame. And for me, the greatest clarity came not from being invited into someone else's life, but from finally realizing I never needed anyone's permission to fully live my own.